welcome back to Sim Racing Reviews, and welcome to my review of Gran Turismo 6. Yeah, in this series we're basically going to be reviewing sim racing software and hardware, and today we're going to talk about the last Gran Turismo game on the PS3 platform, which came out 10 years ago in 2013. So considering it's pretty much exactly 10 years ago since this game came out, let's just take another look at it, because I've also been playing this game quite a bit recently. And I started going through the campaign mode. And back in the day I used to also play this game quite a bit. After I just got into SRL, started playing this game online and league racing and all that. So I've got quite a bit of hours on this game. And so we're just gonna have a look at it. So let's start off with the physics. And I think the physics are actually really well done. Especially considering this game is on the PS3. Now the PS3 is a dated system, so there is a lot of processing power to have a good physics model, and I'd say that the Gran Turismo 6 is actually pretty realistic, especially for a title on the console, on one of the previous generation of consoles. And I'd go as far as saying that it's probably the best racing game on the PS3 physics-wise. So I'm compared it to like the Codemasters F1 games, F1 2010 through to 2013, Dirt 3, Grid Autosport. Stuff like that. I think Gran Turismo 6 is definitely the most realistic one, especially when it comes to driving in road cars and GT cars. I think when it comes down to F1 cars, the F1 game from Codemasters is probably a little bit more realistic, like F1 2013, because the only real open wheel car you can drive, the Formula Gran Turismo, feels a bit weird. So do the old F1 cars that you can drive with the Senna tribute events. But overall, I think it's probably the most realistic racing game on the PS3. And even the force feedback is actually pretty good. You can feel the back end stepping out. You can catch slides very easily. You can feel the limit of the car. I think there isn't really a lot of tire flex, so it's not really like on some modern titles where you can really like feel everything through the wheel. You have to sort of still rely a little bit on what you see, and especially with a wheel like the Logitech here, it feels pretty weak compared to some other racing games, and especially compared to using a different wheel. I've also played this game on the Thrustmaster T300, where it already feels a lot better. But even on this thing, it actually feels pretty alright. It's just very weak, but you can still feel what the car is doing. That's the main thing. And also the braking is pretty realistic, because there are some racing games where maybe the braking is a little bit too easy. And in Gran Turismo 6 it's definitely challenging to actually get the braking right. Also, the tire temperature modeling is pretty good, to the point where your tires actually overheat very quickly. I think it's maybe a bit too quick, like the tires get into the red a little too quickly, but it is definitely challenging to brake in a way without locking up the tires and overheating the front tires, and also accelerating in a way to not step out the rear tires and overheat the rear tires. So I think overall it's a good driving experience, especially for a game on the PS3. So I'd say, considering the time and the platform that this game is on, physics and force feedback, definitely a pro. Now onto the graphics. Visually, especially here in the replay cameras, I just loaded up the game now in the main menu. I also like that when you actually step away, it just shows these random replays from races. It looks really nice. The gameplay itself is pretty good, but the replay cams are something else. Definitely the best I've seen on the PS3. But even the gameplay is alright. I mean, again, compared to modern games, it is not that nice looking. But I think we're very spoiled with the modern games. I think for a PS3 game, it definitely looks nice. You're going for 1080p, 60 FPS. I think it's pretty smooth. I think it stays pretty much at 60 FPS. I think maybe if you get a lot of action going, like a lot of smoke or a lot of AI cars, maybe it can stutter a little bit, but overall it's a very smooth experience, and it definitely stays close to 60 FPS, which is pretty impressive, again, considering the hardware that it runs on. Also, the lighting effects and like the day to night transition looks great. It's very nice to drive in the dark, or to see the transition from light to dark or the other way around. It definitely looks nice. And now onto the sounds. And this is where Gran Turismo 6 is really lacking. The sound model is very poor. Even for other PS3 games, it just doesn't sound right. There have been people that have been comparing it to the sound of vacuum cleaners. And, for a lot of the cars, it almost sounds like that. Like, it's really bad. It's probably the worst racing game in terms of sounds. And the same goes for Gran Turismo 5 as well, by the way, which I haven't done a review on yet. But, you know, it's really lacking in the sound department. There are some cars that sound pretty cool, like the Red Bull X 2014 and some of the old F1 cars. But overall, like all the road cars and even like the sports cars with V8s in it, like the Chevy Camaro V8 or something, it just doesn't even come close. So, yeah, very, very bad sound design. I'm definitely gonna have to give the game a thumbs down on that one. It's definitely one of the big cons of Gran Turismo 6, that the sound just doesn't sound realistic at all. Other than that, I think the UI is actually pretty nice. The way you have the entire hub in the main menu, you can see all the events, and also the special events. I really like the special events like the Goodwood Festival Speed and the Sierra Time Challenge, the Lunar Missions, and the Ayrton Senna Tribute. All of those special events are actually something that really sort of makes the career mode and the single player experience very variable, I guess. It gives a lot of variety I should say. And you know, I think the menu looks nice. I think they're going for this blue color scheme. I really like it. It looks a lot cleaner and a lot more simplified compared to, for example, its predecessor, Gran Turismo 5, where it was all a bit cluttery and sort of hard to navigate sometimes. It's a nice UI. Onto the AI. Again, probably one of the weaker aspects of this game. The AI, no matter which event I tried, I've played through quite a bit of the career mode, they're just drones. They don't really offer any challenge, really. Every race you start, well, in almost every race you start from a rolling start at the back of the field, and you just overtake everyone until you're leading and you win the race. And the AI just don't put any sort of effort into defending their position or attacking you back. You know, you pass them and they're gone, and they never come back to you unless you make a mistake. And it's very unchallenging, and in my opinion it's too easy to win races. So I've even found myself buying cars that are a little bit lower than what is recommended in terms of PP level, to just actually have to work for it and actually have to actually get challenged in order to win races. But even then, even in a slow car, once you overtake an AI, unless they're fast on the straight, they're just not going to pass you back, and they don't actually defend their position. So it never really feels like you're actually racing. It just feels like you're just driving until you get to the end, and that really takes away from the racing aspect, because it really makes it a bit of a grind to go through these events. You know, if you want to save up credits for a new car, if you want to just unlock you know, the international events where you're still in national, just having to go through all the races. I mean, the only thing that makes it enjoyable is the fact that you can earn credits relatively quickly, and you can just buy new cars for each event, and you've got different kind of races on different tracks. I'll get to the track selection in a moment, but you know, that's what makes it enjoyable. But in terms of racing, I just don't really see any racing. I mean, unless you go online, but of course, unfortunately, the servers are permanently closed. So for the single player experience, it's just not very exciting, and the AI is just not hard enough and not challenging enough, because they don't race you, and they're just overall just pretty slow. And also something, the online mode in this game actually had penalties and damage, but in a single player you don't. You can actually set penalties and damage on, I think, for custom race, but for the career mode events there is no damage, no penalties for corner cutting, for ramming others off. You can basically do anything and it doesn't matter, and that's another thing I don't like. And also the fact that there's no damage, you can just smash into other cars and nothing happens, and that, you know, those kind of things just make it so unchallenging and unrewarding to play through the single player races, because they're not offering any challenge. You know, you don't really get a feeling of satisfaction when you win a race, because it just becomes routine basically. Every race is a bit kind of like the same. You just start from the back, you overtake everyone, and you're first, and you know, that just repeats itself again and again and again. I think there's also some licensing issues regarding the damage, so they can't really go all out on the damage, because car manufacturers don't really like to see their cars get damaged a lot. But you know, still, there should be a degree of damage, like it was in online. Back when you could play this game online, there was a bit of visual damage, which was pretty poor, but still it was there, and there was mechanical damage, which was actually pretty good. So I would have just liked to have that in the single player, because I think one of the guys from Gran Turismo said that part of racing is not damaging your car, but you know, part of racing is also crashing. You know, it's almost hard to avoid sometimes. You know, I'm sure that every race car driver who's done more than a handful of races has done some bumping and banging, or has been involved in a wreck, or has had to avoid one. You know, it's part of racing, and in this game you just don't see it. So onto the cars. A huge selection of cars. I mean, over 1,200 cars. I think it's 1,224 in total, which is an extreme amount. Probably the largest car list in any racing game. I mean, let me know if there's any game that has more cars than GT6, because as far as I'm concerned, there isn't actually. So, I mean, maybe it is a little bit overkill, because I don't think anyone plays this game actually has all 1,200 cars. You need a lot of in-game credits for it, and a lot of time to actually drive all of the cars as well. And there's a lot of duplicates as well, so there isn't like 1,200 unique cars. You've also got, you know, for a lot of cars you have like the European model and the American model and the Japanese model. So you can take it with a bit of a pinch of salt, but still it is impressive. Now, a lot of these cars are standard cars which are ported over, but there's also quite a bit of premium cars. I just try to avoid the standard cars altogether. So I basically just played through the entire career mode just buying premium cars, which you can do. I think one of my complaints on GT5 was that you actually were forced to buy second-hand standard cars to go through it. On GT6 you can just buy premium cars. It's not separated anymore, so you have just one dealership, and you can just see which cars are premium and standard. Because I think it says it in the interior, like it's simplified or detailed. So I just try to go with the premium cars altogether and avoid the standard cars. Also because I play in first person, so I don't like to look at a black shaded interior. I just want to have the full interior. But there are so many premium cars as well that it's completely fine to just not pay attention to the standard cars. And part of me actually likes the fact that it is in the game, because it does add up to the car collection. If you own a car in real life, there's a good chance your car is in the game, because there are just so many. So I do really like to see so many cars and even brands in a racing game. So I'm gonna give a thumbs up for that one. Onto the tracks. Again, a really good selection of tracks. You've got, you know, all the big circuits in the world. You've got you know, Le Mans, Spa, Daytona, Bathurst. There's just a great collection of circuits. Also the fantasy circuits, off-road circuits, all sorts of stuff. And it's probably, again, one of the best selection of tracks on all racing games on the old gen consoles. Like I think it'd be hard to find another racing game on the PS3 or Xbox 360, or even a racing game on the current consoles which actually feature you know, a track list like this game. I think only you know, Project Cars or the modern Gran Turismo games can come close to that, to be honest. So yeah, really good selection of tracks. So about the fun factor in this game, I actually think it's very enjoyable, especially back when the servers were still up. I have some really good memories on this game. Back when I was playing it online with the guys from SRL. We were doing open lobbies like every Friday. We had some league races. We had the European Thunderstorm GT Championship, which is what it was called back in the day. And I think that is actually the way how racing games like this are enjoyed the most, because they can actually take it online, race with a bunch of guys that you know, race clean. They can actually have some good racing. And that goes for pretty much every racing game, but also in this game it was a lot of fun. But unfortunately, like I said, since GT Sport came out, basically the servers have been shut down. So we won't ever be able to play this game online again, unfortunately. But no, even in the single player experience, it is enjoyable, in my opinion, to just go through the campaign. It's just different to other racing games, like if I compare it to the F1 games or Project Cars, for example. You know, those games are much more like pure racing. You know, you go into a race weekend where you have practice qualifying the race, you have AI that actually challenge you, long distance races. Another thing, there's no endurance races, which I really don't like. That's one of the things I liked about other Gran Turismo games, and GT5 for example. GT6 is a bit more... the current in GT6 is a bit more fast paced. And I guess it makes it feel a little bit more streamlined, but also a bit more arcade. But you know, still, I think this game is definitely enjoyable to play, even though it can be a bit of a grind sometimes. You know, just having these events, having like the good with festival speed. I really love that, and also there's actually penalties in that. Like you actually have to be precise, you know. Those are the kind of events that are actually challenging. Like you go off course, you're done. You have to do it again. I like that. I want to see that in the actual career mode. You've got the moon exploration, you know, as I said, at the Sierra time drills, and even other things. You even at the seasonal events as well, which are pretty good, but also you can't play them anymore. And the track editor was amazing. I'm really sad to see that goes off, because that's such a good concept to actually be able to create your own track. And even in SRL, we're planning to actually do a big season with a huge calendar with custom-made tracks. But then we sort of moved on to the PS4 a bit earlier than we thought, and we sort of discontinued the season. But it has a lot of potential. I'd love to see that kind of thing return in future Gran Turismo games. Also, one thing which I forgot to mention actually is, of course, I've got the G27 here, which has an H-pattern shifter, and the clutch modeling is actually pretty poor, because I actually enjoyed using the shifter and the clutch pedal, especially in the road cars, and I think it actually makes the game sound a bit better, because it actually, you know, makes it have a transition between gear changes. Because when you actually use the pedals, it just sounds unrealistic. You don't really hear the transition from changing gear. It's like the audio track just is right next to it, and there's no kind of transition. Like you can't actually hear the gear or something. It just sounds unrealistic. I'm actually pressing the clutch and use the gear shifter, you know, it just sounds like it overlaps a little bit. But of course, in the actual cars that have shifters, I just use the shifters. I just used it for like the standard road cars and all that, and the classic old school cars. But it's actually pretty unrealistic and even difficult to shift, because the way the clutch is, you actually have to press in the clutch all the way to the floor and then you can shift. And I actually have the clutch like 99% pressed in. It doesn't actually register it, so there's no like catch point in the clutch, and that's just unrealistic. So I found myself actually missing a lot of shifts, because when you're racing, you're trying to shift quickly and you don't press the clutch in completely, then it just doesn't actually register it, and nothing happens. So it just falls into neutral and I have to do it again, and it was just annoying. Now maybe that's partially just my fault, because I'm maybe not completely used to using the shifter. Of course, I do drive a real car. I have my driver's license, but it's very different in real life, of course, and you don't do it as quickly. But yeah, I just found that the way it feels to shift, at least on the Logitech, was a bit unrealistic. But you know, it's still decent. It works. It has clutch support. You know, even if you can even just stall the car if you let go of everything without having it in neutral or something. So it's actually pretty cool in that way. But my only small gripe that I have with the shifting modeling. Apart from that, this wheel did a good job actually. I mean, it's a very old wheel, and of course I am used to like the Frostmaster and Fanatec stuff on the PS4, and of course it is very basic compared to that, but it does do the job. You know, it's not the best wheel in the world, but it gets the job done, and it actually feels pretty good, even with the false feedback tune all the way up. It's pretty alright. So if I'm gonna give this a rev scale, I think I'm gonna give this game a 7 out of 10, because it has some really good features. It is a nice driving experience, but there is just some negatives to it, like the sound design, the AI, and the way it is a bit of a grind to go through the entire single player campaign. But the good aspects of the game, like the nice physics, the time of day transitions, the weather effects, the variety and all the things you can do, the large car list, and even the customization and all of the events. There's a lot of things, even the coffee break challenges. There's just a lot of things you can do in this game, and that's what makes it enjoyable in my opinion. So it is a decent game. You know, not the best racing game out there, but it does a good job to maximize the hardware as well that it's limited on. So that's gonna do it for my review of Gran Turismo 6. I've been Nick van Gelder. See you next time.